Just giving some time for people to join. Let's.
All right. I think we should all speak once so that we can check our mics are working or not.
Yes, yes. I think because we have spoken between all of us, it seems like our videos and mics are all working. Parul, you are also able to speak. You are on mute, Parul, or what? We cannot hear you. For others, it's all fine. No, we cannot hear you, Parul. Try without the headset and mic.
There is a green tab on the right.
Yeah, I've just clicked on it. Like, is it
Yeah,
audible
now
now?
it's coming.
Okay.
Your voice is coming though with interruption, Parul. Check your network. Okay, I think we have quorum. We can get started. Hello, everyone. We can go on the front slide cover. Hello, everyone. Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the joinees. This is Rahul Bagadia from the team, and I'm glad to be discussing this another webinar in hydrogen series, Hydrogen Global Insight series of P Manifold. In the last webinar, we focused on production of hydrogen. What will be its cost? What are the technologies? What are some of the challenges? And in this webinar today, we will focus more on the distribution of hydrogen. And within that, we will focus more on pipelines. And when you are talking of transporting hydrogen, similar to what you are currently using today, natural gas, then you have an option of blending hydrogen with natural gas, kind of using and leveraging the same pipelines, what is also called retrofitting and blending of hydrogen with natural gas. Another option will be like laying down the complete new pipelines, right? So I think everyone would understand that there are trade-offs. Pipeline setting up that infrastructure is costlier, so it definitely requires a right volume to be able to make our pipelines viable. And I think that is the space which is kind of hydrogen usage and ecosystem is currently. And there are multiple experiments, deployments that has happened globally. I'm glad to be bringing three stalwarts who has a lot of experience in broader petroleum, natural gas, and now also hydrogen industry. Next, please. So first is Dr. Bala Subramaniam. He's a very good friend. He is director at Non-Ferrous Technical Development Center. It's located at Hyderabad. It's one of very unique center of excellence. Is self-funded, sustainable, and they are working on advanced technologies, primarily focusing on materials, processes, and then taking it to TR level, even 7, in space, in biomedicals, in e-mobility, and also now in hydrogen. So Dr. Bala will help us understand the technicalities of using hydrogen and its interaction with the material, some of the challenges it poses, and what technology, how much mature it is today, right? The second panelist is Mr. Rajiv Mathur. Rajiv sir has more than 35 years of experience in petroleum and gas industry. Again, in stalwart, he has multiple roles. Last of his role was with GAIL as their executive director, and he has handled multiple functions within GAIL. Before GAIL, he was leading multiple organizations, including CGDs and different operations again. Very diverse experience of business operations, strategy across portfolio of gas. And our third panelist is Shyam Gupta. I think he is the youngest amongst us, but very wide experience. Shyam is now leading a division within BPCL, one of the largest OMCs of India, where he is heading the green hydrogen initiative of the company. Before that, Shyam has looked into e-mobility and other alternatives for fossil fuel within company and also other previous experiences. I'm joined by my other colleague, Parul, and Parul will help us give a context-setting presentation of this important topic so that we all are a little bit soaked into similar landscaping, some similar numbers, and one common lens to kind of discuss for this webinar. So I invite Parul to kind of take us through briefly through his context setting presentation. Thank you, Parul. And again, I extend heartiest welcome to all the panelists and my dear audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I also welcome all the panelists here. So basically,
I think your voice is cracking.
Parul, your voice is cracking. Maybe you want to turn off your video.
I have turned off. Is it audible now? Clearly?
I think so. Let's try.
Yes,
Give that a try,
better.
Parul.
Okay. The basic coverage of this presentation includes global green hydrogen scenario and transportation, green hydrogen supply chain through pipeline transportation, economics of GH2 pipeline, new versus retrofitting, technical and economic considerations for choosing retrofitting over new pipelines, case studies of green hydrogen supply through pipelines.
Parul, it is coming with lot of cracking. Uh, can you change
If you
to the
can,
next? We cannot
okay,
hear you.
okay. Just a minute. Is it audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Parul, this was good.
Okay. Yeah. So moving forward and understanding about the global scenario of hydrogen, as we can see, like today the world is harnessing renewable sources like solar, wind, water to produce hydrogen. So the shift towards energy independence is paramount. Currently, as we can see, the world hydrogen demand stands up to 90 million metric tons, which when projected to 2050 goes to 660 million metric tons per annum. So as we can see, like 22% of the global hydrogen demand for the net zero is to be taken care of. After that, understanding on the holistic level, like what is hydrogen supply chain. So it consists of energy and feedstock, hydrogen production, transformation, storage and transportation, and then end use application. So in this webinar, we will be only talking about the transportation that is there. In the transportation also, we will be talking about transportation is through rail, road, sea and pipelines. So our webinar focuses on the pipeline that is there. So when we talk about the cost of hydrogen through pipelines, as we can see, like the major up to 1,000 kilometers with volume of 1 ton per day, truck trailers can be convenient to use. However, for carrying higher volumes over long distances, pipelines are the most convenient option. As also we can see, like for large volumes and to the larger distances, so the cost that we get around is around 0.1 to 0.58 of dollar per kg. This is the tentative amount that we are carry forwarding, and when we compare it, like it is only 5 to 20% of the cost of hydrogen and production cost of cost of hydrogen, and 10% of the cost when compared to truck and trailers. Then we understand the overview of hydrogen transport through pipelines. So first we have the hydrogen production, wherein we get hydrogen from various of the sources in various forms: green hydrogen, blue, gray. Then all of these goes to the hydrogen storage through the transmission line where our topic comes into picture, wherein we are blending it in using the existing natural gas pipelines. So there we have the compression stations basically. And also we have here two end use cases. So first is like we are using the blended hydrogen for transportation, industrial and residential use cases. And second is we are trying to have a hydrogen separation, and after that using pure H2 for that. Also, when we can see like this is the global status of pipeline of transportation blending throughout the world. Here are the list of countries which tell us like what percentage of hydrogen blending has been observed on the ongoing projects in the past projects that are there. Also, here I have tried to highlight what is the project name basically of each of the cities that are each of the countries that are there, and what sort of end use these projects are getting forward. It is also inferred that majority of the projects which are recently being done focuses on all the three end uses for residential, industrial and transportation. Now understanding the economics of hydrogen pipeline, we come to understand like the share of levelized cost of hydrogen comes around 10% of the total cost of hydrogen production. Also, as we can see, basically the transportation cost of green hydrogen shows a potential reduction from $0.2 per kg for 2030, which we have referred. Now understanding the cost of hydrogen pipelines, so we need to understand like these pipelines also have their sort of types and dimensions. So we have these 5 types basically: small, medium, large, offshore medium and offshore large. And also here in the legend, as we can see, I have tried to map it like there are small new pipelines and small retrofitted pipelines that are there. So when we come to understand, like there is a point wherein we also understand like what is the capex. Like if we see for new hydrogen pipeline, it comes to around 45% of capex value that is needed, and more to be focused upon the energy stock and the operating cost, which is higher than 50%, that we come to understand. Now moving forward to the opportunities and challenges with retrofitted pipelines. So the opportunities are existing infrastructure is present. The natural gas line pipe networks are present, which may be helpful. The second is the cost savings, gradual conversions, geographical coverage extending to the whole geographical area of higher division, distribution efficiency, available technologies which are there, and it is a cost efficient. The challenges that are there for retrofitting are hydrogen embrittlement, steel grade uncertainty, diameter and yield strength, higher operating cost, that is the major parameter that we have seen in the previous slide also, internal coating, whale fittings replacement. So this is the case study. Basically, I've tried to understand wherein this is the case study of UK, wherein there was a project basically named as High Deploy. The project main goal was to reduce the carbon emissions that are majorly operated, that are majorly done in the UK due to the heatings that are there. So here we have the 3 phases. So phase 1 constitutes about the testing of to demonstrate the safety of H2 blended network. So here we have material testing, quantitative risk assessment, atmospheric testing, and this phase 1 was around of 10 months, carried forward for the phase 2, which is a trial H5 Deploy 2 project for 1500 households, and the 3, which is the HyNet project, basically going for 2 million households. Also to understand, we also have a project based in UK which tells about H21, which talks about 100% of hydrogen in natural gas network distribution in UK. The goal of this project is to demonstrate the techno-commercial viability of 100% conversion from natural gas to hydrogen. So here also the pledges serves around 10,000 households for receiving the hydrogen. Also, there is a proper implementation of a lead city and highlighting the importance of geographical area location for demonstrating this particular project to serve these of the areas of the city. So by this, we get an idea about what type of importance and what type of context setting does pipeline play for the transportation of hydrogen. Now I would like to invite Rahul sir. Rahul sir, please.
Thank you very much, Parul, for this good presentation and helping us pull together some of the interesting and relevant facts and numbers around the globe. I think in this discussion today, we would want to understand like what is happening around in the world and in India around hydrogen usage in the pipelines. What are the economics which are driving these changes, right? Like there has to be the reasons why we want to convert, why the end user would want to convert into hydrogen, and hence that demand will drive the pipeline. I think Parul's presentation was very clear that only for high volumes of demand and certainty pipelines viability improves, and then only it starts adding up that benefit over other form of I would say road transport driven hydrogen transportations, right? So the economics becomes important, the technical maturity, handling of hydrogen with its permeability, high permeability, what are those issues that we need to still solve, and solve it with the right kind of localization in Indian context. So let me quickly bring Bala to first kind of Bala, how do you see the transportation of hydrogen, which is one form of energy, right? Transportation of electricity, electron versus hydrogen as a molecule. And for hydrogen, then we have multiple options. And within that, we are talking of pipeline in this particular presentation. So what is that system perspective that you think are relevant for us before we deep dive into the pipeline considerations for hydrogen transportation, Bala?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, at the outset, what one has to delineate is the following. There are two levels in which energy companies or systems operate. One is as a commodity at large scale, and the other is which is from the seller's perspective, and the other is from the user's customer perspective, right? So if you take that, you'll get what we call as a bird's view and a worm's view simultaneously. The seller can consider themselves to be, let's say, like energy companies, where let's say the resource is available at a particular place, and therefore you are moving that energy resource to the point of use. In the case of hydrogen, there is a small twist. Hydrogen is now the energy system or fuel, energy economics and currency, which is not resource dependent. It is not that it is available in a particular geography, country as a naturally endowed resource, and therefore that country or that companies that control it become the main suppliers. This is the first time in the history that we are going to have an energy resource that will be ubiquitous across the globe, and it is only technology dependent and not resource or endowment dependent. In other words, we are going to convert a renewable energy of solar or wind, which is available across the world, into another energy source, which is hydrogen. So this gives a big paradigm shift, right? So if that is the case, then very large scale producers can be just not one, and it can be many. And not only that, you can start producing it at multiple distributed points. Now, the distribution via pipeline or as a container across the ships or on a trailer on road, all of them operate on the principle of a large source of energy at one point, and that requires a multiple node and distribution network. Now, contrast this to the other way around, where from the customer point of view, if you are looking at hydrogen, the customer has to make a decision. What is best to transport, electricity or hydrogen? Now, just as you say, you have pipelines for moving energy, like for example, natural gas. Now you already have the electrical grid network, which is moving the electricity, and therefore you can produce hydrogen at site. So the comparison has to be for transport of hydrogen has to be, the metrics has to be slightly changed in the sense that whether it is from the seller's perspective or whether it is from the user's perspective. If it is driven mostly from the user's perspective, then transporting electricity and generating even large quantities of hydrogen at site, depending upon whether it is for process or for if it is or as of now, we know hydrogen only as gray hydrogen, which is a feedstock hydrogen for refineries, as a petrochemical feed, hydrogenation feed, and also for fertilizer companies. So this is what is the biggest consumption of hydrogen as on date, 99.9%. If it has to shift to process, other processes like even hydrogen reduction of steel making, cement sector, which are really has to be decarbonized, then a graded decarbonization will happen in those industries because you can't do 1:1. Now, when it is graded decarbonization, there, the first as a technology driver, your blended CH4 plus H2 is the first pick because it uses both methane as well as hydrogen in the process. So wherever the end user requires both, whereas a reductant as well as a thermal energy source concurrently, this is ideal sweet spot. You can even you don't have to even do carbon capture post facto. You can even deposit by remove carbon a priori. In fact, that's one of the most efficient ways hydrogen is going to be produced in the near future. So that being the case, there will be enough both the technological driver plus utilizing of the existing network of natural gas pipelines and even natural gas systems and produce and inject hydrogen wherever required. So this is one sector where there is still a role of existing CNG pipelines that plays. The third one is trickiest one, the last one. The third one is the trickiest one, that is in mobility. Okay, the mobility sector requires distribution, at least at a particular city level, or that distribution is required, and that distribution requires two things that have to be done, and that is what is we are seeing the ushering in of trailers up to 1,000 and 2,000 kgs trailers moving in, and high pressures of 700 bar have to be canisterized into a mobility space. So in other words, this is where I call as core technologies have to be also positioned. We just cannot distribute it alone to a point. Again, the boosting of the pressure and dispensing that to the vehicle cylinders or swapping the cylinders or whatever is this thing. Therefore, if you look at the systems, you have to look at the three case scenarios where it is a lot easier to transport electricity and locally produce based on the end use. The second one is where progressive decarbonization will happen in steel and cement, etc., where our existing CNG pipeline with hydrogenation can go. Even for mobility, wherever CNG is used in the mobility, substitution with hydrogen will be the first transition that will happen, which is already happening, right? Just as you have ethanol going into this. And the third thing that can happen is hydrogen being transported as ammonia as well as liquefied natural gas, because these are the best two carriers. So that's why you have LNG terminals, just as you have CNG terminals, which has come up in various ports. You're going to have terminals that are dedicated to hydrogen or ammonia that will come up. That's are already coming up. So if they are coming up, then from that terminal again, you'll have a gas pipeline options that will come, which will be our learning experience of CNG terminals and LNG terminals will start working for it. Ammonia terminals will immediately come, and so if there are big traders in hydrogen where they can produce hydrogen very cost effectively, they would like to convert it into ammonia or and then move it. And once they have moved it via ships, again they have to distribute it, and that distribution will be pipeline to some extent, but depending upon the end user, it will be on the trucks as well. And finally, the economic comparison comes on transporting electricity versus transporting hydrogen. This is how I would like to summarize the three scenarios.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Bala. I think that's a very useful way also to start the discussion, that when we have energy to be moved to the end user, like what form it takes the best form, like because we already have the existing electricity grid, and with electrolysis we can produce hydrogen, and that is one option, that electricity is moving to receive it on the user and produce hydrogen, use it. So that's one option Bala is suggesting. Second is the blending that we are saying, and where the end use is a mix of natural gas and also hydrogen, that I think those use cases gets favored. And third is where the use case is still purely hydrogen, but we are using it as in a carrier form like ammonia, right? Where we are typically talking of transporting from one country to the other. So I think very good way.
Add one more small thing. Today the models have come where the photovoltaic wind energy hybrid combined with hydrogen production is that's how they're doing the capex now. There is one more thing that comes is you will be producing solar energy PV in one place. The grid is going to wheel it to you at another place, and you're going to take it. So it is not that you're going to produce hydrogen from a fossil fuel. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying that how to use the existing grid and also add your PV and windmill to it and get the job done. Thank you.
Sure. Coming to you, Shyam, just connecting to that point of Bala, CGDs, the City Gas Distribution Network in India, is emerging very fast, right? Like more than some 300 uh, geographical areas have been allocated in India. So they are acting as an aggregator, which is currently taking this natural gas, which is coming from a bulk source through big pipelines, which are typically maintained by GAIL. And then the CGD operator, like BPCL and many other private operators at a city level, take a tap of this big transmitter line, and then you are catering to the end consumers, right? And these end consumers are typically the biggest chunk, I think, is the mobility chunk, running CNG, compressed natural gas, for transportation purpose, then industry, and then possibly the evolving segment is a piped natural gas of replacing cooking LPG at home through the pipe network. So how do you see this landscape, which is already existing in India, this mechanism which is already using natural gas, to be able to benefit from hydrogen and also be acting as a new kind of an infrastructure which possibly can be retrofitted with some efforts uh, to be able to become compliant and start using more hydrogen in the end use applications. So what's your thoughts on that, Shyam?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Bala Sahab. You have already set the tone for this particular discussion. So to start with, let me look at the globe, how it is divided and how developing countries are going to have to prioritize the thing. And in this prioritization, how we are seeing the clean energy, particularly natural gas or hydrogen, is taking the shape. So if you look at entire continents, everything across the globe, you will find that, in my personal view, there are two parts. One is developed world, another one is developing countries. And developing country is the one area where we are residing in. So why I said this classification, because the moment you talk about developing countries, our priorities are different. Our needs are different, be it at the government level or at the consumer level. So government sets the priorities, particularly from the perspective of having the social equity, social justice, as well as economic growth. So those are the priorities for them in the energy segment. They try to prioritize energy security, energy equity, and energy access. Whereas as a consumer, what we want, that is predominantly three A's. Three A's means affordability, that's the prime objective, particularly for developing country like India. Another one is accessibility, and third one is availability. So if these three things are combined together as a package and given to the consumers, they'll be very happy to adopt it. So we need to look through the prism of these three A's to each of the fuels, how that is placed in the overall hierarchical order of priorities. So now I come to the CGD segment. So the moment you talk about this accessibility or availability, natural gas is one thing which is being produced domestically, and it is being transported to the consumer point in a seamless manner. However, we need to make a sync between national priorities versus consumers. So pipeline is one segment which deems to be well fit between the objectives of both. Why? Because it is least transportation mode. At the same time, it also reduces the traffic congestion. So that eventually translate into carbon reduction. So that is linked with your climate goals, COP28, or whatever the kind of commitments we have outside. At the same time, you are also decongesting the roads. So accidents are lesser, your pollution is less, and there are more vehicles to ply on the road. So that way, national objective is being met, and here the cheapest product is being reached to the consumers. Otherwise, it would have been much costlier. So pipeline has a lot of significance in this country. As far as CGD part is concerned, I'll come to, because CGD infrastructure expansion is all about availability and accessibility. And that is why way back, somewhere around 2010 or 11, PNGRB started thinking about to have the natural gas grid in this country. And that is how US aid came forward. And I was there in PPAC as assistant director. And we did the joint exercise to look at how this country can have the grid. And we envisaged, after doing meticulous work, we found that we need at least 35,000 kilometers of pipelines. If that could be well set up in this country, probably we can reach out each and every nook and corner of this country. And that is where this whole objective was formulated. So far, we have reached to the tune of 23,000 kilometers of pipeline. That is only, we are talking about cross-country pipeline, means trunk pipeline, which is adjoining all the cities, all the villages in a kind of grid formation. And still almost 14,000 kilometers are in the pipeline or under construction. Even that particular kind of construction demands for about $20.8 million of investment. So that we have already committed at various stages, but we are trying to complete that. Once this particular pipeline network is completed, how we can reach, how can meet the demand of the consumers? For that, another concept came, that was various bidding rounds of the PNGRB. So what we started doing is that we cannot develop entire country in terms of accessibility right at once. So let us start identifying the areas where we have right set of people, right set of infrastructure, right set of vehicles available, and there will penetrate, so that people who are interested to set up the infrastructure should be also having the viability of their projects. And that is why various CGD rounds up to 11 we have come forward, and we have created almost 295 geographical areas. We have covered almost 98 of the population, 88% of the geographical areas of this country. So this is what we have done so far, and probably 12th round is also in the offing. It has been already floated, and now we are going to add another 7 GS in the kitty. What it has done, what miraculous work this particular CGD network has done. They have done direct services to the customers. They have enrolled about 1.1 crore, means you can call 11 millions of customers. They are hooked up with the PNG segment. Earlier they were using LPG. So LPG is again C3, C4. And here you are directly supplying C1. So again, that core concept of national interest is being fulfilled. And what additionally government has done, they have said that since you people are reducing the carbon, you should be benefited. And that is why they have come up with very amicable pricing system. And that is where affordability also comes to the fore. So these people are given the prioritization, CGD sector per se, which includes transportation. Transportation means all kinds of vehicles where we take the natural gas to run the vehicle. That is called CNG in India. So that CNG compressed natural gas and PNG piped natural gas are the two segments where government is giving all kinds of subsidies. Now, recently, in the April 2023, government realized that international gas prices are going through the roof. So what government has decided that let us give solace to our consumers, and that is why they have fixed the pricing ceiling price of the natural gas through APM route. That is another source of domestic production to $6.5 per MMBTU. Of course, there are other chunk of production that comes from the domestic sources, and those are slightly expensive. To give the perspective, let's say if APM gas is not able to meet the supply, then all the JVs or rest of the other production has to be priced at 10% of the crude oil prices. Even that is not much because it is again affordable for the consumers. Third part is free, that is predominantly for the STPT area, high temperature, high pressure areas, and their cost of production is also very high. So that has to be free, and that is why market freedom has been given so that the domestic production should keep on adding up, because the moment we go ahead and keep importing, it means we are jeopardizing our own energy security. And that is why this particular ecosystem has been built and can be viewed through the lenses of 3 A's, which are paramount for any economy which are developing and aspiring to become developed. So with this, I just rest my case. Of course, I have more to say about hydrogen. Probably if you want, I can stitch together how this and hydrogen can further accelerate, provided there are certain incentives like natural gas has obtained over the period of time in order to make more cleaner fuel with more affordable access. So that part will definitely try to deliberate upon if time permits. So let me rest my case here. Probably in the next discussion, I will explain the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shyam. I think it was good to understand like how CGDs have evolved, how benefit they are between different players, including BPCL. Let me come to Rajiv. Rajiv, as GAIL, there were some projects earlier uptaken with in Indore about blending hydrogen with natural gas. Could you kind of help us understand like what was that project? Where do it stand today? How it is benefiting the overall stakeholders? And with those learnings, like how India can more strongly look into the blending of hydrogen in the CGD networks.
Okay, I think before I go to the experience of Indore, let me give my views on the, why hydrogen and why hydrogen and gas pipelines, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, perfect, Rajiv.
Yeah. So let's look at, what's happening world over. And we are seeing that, the entire world is progressing. Lots of energy requirement is there. And on top of it, we are experiencing the climate change. Now, with the climate change and the kind of pressing demand on energy transition that is there, a lot of investments are going into cleaner fuels. And by cleaner fuels, as Mr. Balasubramanian said, solar, wind, you do electrolysis, you are looking at hydrogen and various other things. And some estimates suggest that what we will need going forward in these clean fuels and also associated networks like infrastructure and gas pipelines, etc., is close to 4.5 billion US dollars, or not billion, trillion US dollars every year you will need for the next 25 years. So that is the kind of transition, investment in transition, and the impact of climate change that would require kind of investments if we are really serious about it. And some estimates suggest, if you look at India per se, out of this to 4.5 trillion that we are talking about, we will need at least 350 to 400 billion US dollars on an annual basis, say by 2047 or so. And we have also given a commitment 2070. Some companies have come forward to even be net zero much earlier. So all these investments will need to be accelerated. And estimates say that by 2047, we will need non-fossil fuels to have at least 85% of the chunk of the energy requirements going forward. So my take is that green hydrogen or any other form of hydrogen, gray hydrogen or blue or whatever you might like to call it, will form a very strong basis of whatever we are looking forward on the kind of energy use that is going to happen. And some estimates which I have come across suggest that 25 million tons per annum of green hydrogen kind of production is what the government's stated objective is, going forward. So, a lot of success in energy transition, looking towards hydrogen and other things, will depend on the kind of investment, kind of financing, and the ecosystem that we develop across the green hydrogen chain. And not only that, as I said, a lot of funding would be required. Therefore, we will be looking at, even in case of gas pipelines, if you're looking at blending with the hydrogen, or if you're looking at exclusive hydrogen pipelines, a lot of financing and funding would be required. And all of that may not necessarily be on a commercial basis, looking at the IR and other things, if we need to accelerate the kind of transition that we are looking at. And therefore, some innovative commercial structures would also be required to be in place. And coupled with that, we will have to have progressive policies, regulatory support, and all associated ecosystem to be in place. My own take is that the government is very seized of it, and they are coming out with PLI schemes and other things. And for hydrogen itself, I think they have set aside some 1.5 billion US dollars kind of a thing for 5 million ton capacity. That's on the production side. But then once this hydrogen comes, as was rightly put, you need to take it to point of consumption also. So what has been happening in the past is we've been producing gray hydrogen, and gray hydrogen has been used in fertilizer plants, steel plants, wherever it was produced, it's been used in the past. Now what we need to do is look at taking it to other consumption points, like Shyam said, local distribution networks are being set up, and they are connecting to every household. They are looking at transport sector, etc., etc. So that, the piece in between is a transmission pipeline. And till today, we have been using all those transmission pipelines only for transportation of natural gas, which is predominantly methane. Of course, there's some ethane, propane, etc., but very little bit. And hydrogen itself has not been transported in the past, neither in blended form or exclusively. So now the question comes whether when we are looking at transition, a lot of hydrogen to be involved in the entire energy space in our country going forward, and numbers like 85% for clean energy, I'm sure hydrogen will have a very substantial chunk of that, the kind of numbers that are getting generated. So we will need to look very closely at these transmission pipelines and also distribution networks to be either in place exclusively for hydrogen or blended or in retrofitted form. So one of those three options will have to be exercised. And at some points of time, initially, my take is that they may not be commercially so attractive for anybody who's doing it. But then looking at the larger public interest, the larger objective, and the good for the public, I'm sure some of these or one or two of these will be exercised. If not, new hydrogen pipelines, at least the blended hydrogen pipelines would definitely be existing going forward in transmission of gas along with hydrogen. So, while I mean, the other thing that I want to say is that Shyam talked about 23,000 kilometers of trunk transmission pipelines in place, another 14,000 coming up. So I guess about 40,000 kilometers of pipelines would be there across India. So the question of transportation of hydrogen, once all the safety and other aspects are looked into closely, and whatever retrofitting or changes are required are in place, most of these pipelines would be ready to be used for taking the hydrogen from point of production to the point of last consumption. So it's only a matter of time, maybe 2 years, 5 years, whatever it takes for establishing the reliability, of the system, whatever changes are required in the system, and then trying to, as the hydrogen production kicks off and takes place, blending that hydrogen with natural gas in the system and delivering it to wherever it is required to be taken. So all this, I think, augurs well for using the existing infrastructures, initially, because when it comes to a question of costs, etc., Shyam would be able to tell, how a new pipeline costs maybe 4 times more than a existing one which is going to be retrofitted. I think the first option that anybody would exercise is whatever infrastructure is available, let's look at that. Let's look at what retrofitting or what changes are required and get going with it, and figuring out as to what is the level of blending that is possible without compromising the integrity and safety of the system. So these are certain things that I'm sure we will be doing going forward. Would you want me to take you through the challenges in the transmission networks that we'll have to face when we are blending hydrogen? Should I?
That later, Rajiv.
Or I take you to what we've done experience in Navaltika?
Yeah, I think that will be good to understand, like what has been the rollout experience and learning and challenges. I think we can.
Okay, because that's more technical. So coming back to the city distribution networks and whether blending of gas and hydrogen is possible and to what extent. So as a pilot project, GAIL started in Indore, one of our CGDs, where we started off with 2% blending last year. So what we did is that at the city gate station, from where the transmission network hands over the gas to the distribution entity, whosoever is distributing in that particular geographical area. At that point, what they have done is that they have put some hydrogen injection equipment. So, and that hydrogen injection equipment is putting the hydrogen. We have limited it to 2. Last year we limited it to 2% to start with, and that 2% was monitored depending on the flow and other parameters, and the limit of hydrogen was accordingly set, so that 2% by volume is what always remains and goes into the system. So a very little amount of retrofitting done at the city gate station for injection of hydrogen, and limiting the volume of hydrogen into the blended system at 2%. And that was, we studied that for about 6 months to 8 months. There was absolutely no abnormality found either in the system or by the users. In fact, nobody noticed that even 2% hydrogen had actually been blended. And it was once announced in the papers that it's being done, but after that, it was not even announced. So that's point number one. Then we decided that in our polymer network, which is low pressure, what we will do is we have got DRSs. Local distribution is done, stepping down the pressure from say 19 bar or 7 bar, depending on what the design of the system is, to maybe 4 bar, 2 bar, and then it goes into millibars when it reaches the house. At that junction point where local distribution happens in colonies, we started injection of another 3%. What from 24th of March this year, actually that's the date, the blending rate has been increased to 5%. So now what is happening is, so we are witnessing that for the last 6 months now. Intention is to witness it for some more time, see what the kind of results or outcome is, or if there is any abnormality found in the system, or if we find that there is something which is different than what we had experienced while pure natural gas was being distributed. So that's an ongoing exercise which is happening. End of the year, then we will study those things and see whether in the system any changes are required, or retrofitting is required, or any valves or fittings, or anything else that, or some kind of casing is required where one feels the pipe is getting weak or something like that. So that is presently in progress. And quantity wise, in that small network, wherever we are injecting 5% now, it's coming to around 13,000 SCM of hydrogen, which is being mixed with natural gas. So that's the actual volume of hydrogen which is being mixed. And interestingly, the area which we chose leads to 3,000 PNG consumers. So that 5% blended hydrogen gas is being delivered to 3,000 consumers for the last 6 months now. And they have not noticed any change in any requirement, or they have not complained for that matter. And neither have they experienced anything abnormal, because we keep on getting complaints if there is a pressure loss, or if there is some soot, or if there is some metering error or something like that. So whatever complaints are coming in are the normal ones, which anyway were coming as far as when 100% natural gas was being blended. And this is also going to some 80-90 small and medium industrial consumers, and hotels and restaurants also. So it's a sizable chunk of downstream consumers that are experiencing this 5% blending that is being happening in the network today. As we go forward, we will take the learnings from this and see how much more we can go and what else we can do, if there are any changes that are required or any retrofitting, or as I said, anything that needs to be done. On the transport sector side, CNG, which is a major chunk of the piped gas that is being distributed in Indore. The CNG tanks which are fitted in the vehicles, where the pressure is going up to 250 bar, there the PESO, which is the safety regulator, they have allowed only 2% blending. So that 2% blending which we were doing in the pipeline network, we are doing in some of those stations from where we are dispensing CNG also. Okay. But since those are the prevailing guidelines and that's the limit to which we have been told by the safety regulator to limit to. So we are doing parallel laboratory tests of whether blending at high pressures of added hydrogen volumes is possible, but that is a bench test which is going on, not on the running commercial networks or stations from where we are dispensing CNG.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. I think this was very helpful to know a case where we are already doing 2 to 5% of blending in existing CGD in India, in Indore with Avantika you mentioned. So I think great. Shyam, if I come back again to you, kind of checking BPCL's perspective as a CGD operator, right? Looking upon hydrogen as an opportunity, how you think, like with this experiment of Avantika, what learnings exist which will allow BPCL and likewise similar other CGDs to take this thing to their customers? Also at the end of the day, like for what reasons, like what economics to the end user and to also the operator. So if you can share your thoughts around it, Shyam.
Thank you. In fact, Rajiv sir has made my job easier in order to explain, because he has given good amount of deliberations and elaborations, particularly on the usage of blended natural gas to the end consumers. So what I can tell you that here the issue is, as I was talking about in my previous narrative, about the affordability. So affordability for the supplier as well as buyer, both is the key. Means that is the important nuance in the whole segment. So if you could get the hydrogen at a very cheap cost, let's say in parity with whatever the prevailing cost of natural gas is in that particular market, then it does make sense to go ahead. Or you can get cheaper than natural gas. Then probably it makes sense to go in a big way and start blending over there. Because the moment you blend any quantum, and if that quantum is on the higher side, and there is no policy compulsion in order to blend you, in order to make you blend that hydrogen in the natural gas pipeline, it doesn't make any sense to blend it. So there are two scenarios in my narrative that is latent. One is where your hydrogen prices are higher than the natural gas price. Another one is where the hydrogen prices are lower than the natural gas price. Now I take the first particular scenario, when and how and to what extent this difference in the prices can be, depending upon the kind of hydrogen we are going to use for blending purpose. So one thing is, let's say we start with the existing gray hydrogen, whatever we have been producing. Like we are taking natural gas, we are putting in our SMR through PSA and all, we are producing hydrogen. And that is currently being used. in BPCL. So we are using more than 200,000 tons of hydrogen every year. And similarly, HPCL is also using to the similar quantum. And of course, IOCL is big brother, so they are using double of this particular quantum. So this much of hydrogen is already being used by the refineries if you remove the color out of it. So it is not a new thing for oil companies per se in order to understand or start using natural gas. So we have big capability on day-to-day basis handling. Problem is, even this natural gas based blue hydrogen so-called is costing us about $2 per kg. To be very conservative, at current prices, in terms of rupees, it is about 200 rupees per kg. So that's the kind of pricing we are witnessing as of today at the refinery gate where we are producing. I am ignoring rest of the other cost here, right? If we go ahead and start producing, let's say, grid-connected electrolyzer-based hydrogen, then costing would be somewhere around 3.45 to 4, depending upon the scale of the plant. If we are going ahead with 10 megawatt kind of scale, then prices will be $4.24. If we are going ahead with, let's say, 250, 100 megawatt kind of size or beyond, then prices may come down to 3.5, depending upon the, of course, renewable profile, its hybrid, or to what extent your capacity utilization is. But I'm just giving the ballpark number. Of course, there are so many nuances involved into that. So that is another kind of costing. So which is going to be about a 300 to 350 rupees per kg. Now you see 200 to 350. But many of the green advocates will start pitching in and say that this is not green because it is coming from grid. Your grid is hardly 20% green. 80% is through some thermal power or the rest of the other sources. So how can you say that this is purely from the renewable side? So it's not green. So of course that component I want to remove. Let us say I'm going to go ahead with co-located hybrid plant in the best of the location, let's say Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Kutch area, which is counted to be the best profile in terms of wind as well as solar. So it is giving 58% of COF for your electrolyzer. And I am I'm using over capacity of the electrolyzer because it is 30% cost of the overall installation. And I can also store by extending the capacity of the renewable during the daytime or during the electricity production time, I am maximizing my production. You're getting my point. So I'm trying to maximize. So what I'm trying to do, I am ensuring green. I am also using that hydrogen to the maximum possible by oversizing the power plant capacity, power generation capacity. Still, my cost will not come down below 4.5 to 5. So again, you are reaching 200 to 350, 400 to 450, 500. So that's the kind of range of the hydrogen is being produced as a current reality. Now, having given this kind of perspective and backdrop, let's come to the blending. Oh, sorry, second scenario I could not talk about. This is the first scenario where we are seeing very centralized kind of production. It is not decentralized, and directly by the heavy capex involvement is there, and people are, let us say, they are going to produce it. Now, another part is smaller one, which are decentralized in nature. Those are chloralkali sector. I don't know how many of you must have heard about this sector. So they are soda ash making companies. So they have been utilizing various product, and for them, unfortunately, hydrogen is not the product. It is the byproduct, unwanted product in the process, because they process sodium hydroxide. So OH part gets converted into hydrogen. So they want to just either throw it in the atmosphere, or they can sell it after utilizing certain portion for their own captive consumption. So that is not, even best of the scenarios, they are not able to sell beyond 60-65%. So if you float a tender, you will find that the cost of that hydrogen is very cheap, and they can supply that particular hydrogen to your location, wherever you want to use it, through the cascade. That is about 150 kg per truck. And that cascade includes about 120, 125 odd cylinders, 1 kg each, 1.1 kg each. So that's the kind of value proposition they can offer. This particular hydrogen is way cheaper than whatever I talked about in the first scenario. So why I give this perspective that if you want to understand the complexity involved in the pricing, we need to understand these two scenarios. And now we can start, let's say we want to blend and see in terms of doing the pilot, whether my project is compatible enough, whether it is being accepted by the end consumers or not. We can start with the chloralkali one or blue. No need to have the green in this case. So we can try to have the proof of the concept, and then we can think about various gradations based on policy. As of now, policy is not there, even though it has been stated in the objective of the government. They are planning to have at least 20% blending by 2030. That is the kind of objective has been set by the government. And government is also saying that almost 20% of our entire lot of the vehicle, overall vehicle park, at least sales of those vehicles should be on alternate fuel. SCNG is also identified as alternate fuel. So I give you this example. Why? Because now let's say we float a tender and get the hydrogen at 60 rupees, 70 rupees per kg. Then it makes sense to start commercializing SCNG to any of the consumers, because we are going to get benefited out of it, because anywhere prices are not less than 75, 76 in the present scenario. So there is direct benefit and it makes commercial sense. We can right away start doing that. The moment you go for any other thing, let's say chloralkali one has been already hooked up and totally exhausted, and you don't get the right set of bidders in your quotation, in your tender. Now you go ahead with some kind of gray ones. Question is, you are going to blend only 2%, let's say, to start with. But that 2% is actually going to translate into, at 200, is about 0.5 to 0.6 rupees per kg in the delivered blended SCNG. So who is going to bear that 0.6 rupees or 0.7 rupees, whatever is going to come? The moment you keep increasing the blend, this cost will become more whopping. It is needless to mention. So the question comes whether we want to reduce emissions. Yes, we does. So even if we take the example of some research, what we have found is, even if you go ahead with 20%, in US many projects have been done on a pilot basis, and mind you, anywhere across the globe, nowhere it is commercialized. Everybody is doing only at a pilot scale so far. Only one recent project is probably through, but nobody is doing at the cross-country pipeline. I'll talk about it later. So what I'm trying to say is that this costing is the important factor. And as per research, even if we go ahead and start blending 20%, then what is the kind of benefit we are going to get in terms of carbon reduction? And that is hardly 7%. So carbon abatement is only 20%, only 7% out of blending 20% of hydrogen. I'm talking about gray. Green is, again, in fact, they have taken green. So based on green, that is what is the kind of quantum that is coming. And what they are trying to say is that if we take this particular 7% into account and existing cost, then carbon abatement cost, if you calculate, that comes out to be $500 per ton of CO2 equivalent. That's the kind of carbon abatement cost is coming. So here the question is whether we need to go ahead with this order in order to have $500 for carbon abatement cost for per ton of CO2, or we can think about some alternates, or government can pitching in and start saying that you need to start blending. So those are the kind of nuances are still there. Government has committed to blend 20% by 2030. It's a matter of time. They are also watching how industry is comfortable, how people are coming up with the technical solutions, whether we can go beyond 2% or not. See, I'll just try to add what Rajiv sir has beautifully explained about Avantika gas. See, the moment we categorize, very quickly I'll give the explanation. There are 3-4 different segments. Let's say if you talk about transport segment and you go for this blending beyond 2%, there will be a lot of challenges. As long as you replace all the fleet with new vehicles, there will be no challenge up to 10%. The moment you start having the blend of the vehicle, the kind of vehicle mass we have about 340 million vehicles in this country. So if you have that kind of blends, let's say auto rickshaws or passenger cars, so in those vehicles, if you go beyond 2%, there is strong chances of either unburnt hydrogen or there may be an issue of cracking. So what will happen is knocking and cracking. So knocking and cracking will be witnessed. These are the technical terms. For the consumer, it will be like there is a lot of noise coming after taking this fuel. There is some problem. Even though they will get the mileage, they will definitely appreciate. But that knocking because of unburned or because of some problem in the metal, these things are going to happen. So you need to adjust the kinetic index of that engine. And asking a vendor, a consumer who is layman, who doesn't know hydrogen, who doesn't know all these technicalities, to allow us to change the certain part of your engine, they will definitely be very worried about it. So that's the kind of challenge is going to happen in this particular segment. Second portion is your direct PNG consumers. So for PNG consumers, since these pipelines, as Rajiv sir has already given the explanation, are mostly SDP pipelines or PE pipelines. So those pipelines are very much durable. There is no metal involved, so embrittlement and rest of the other issues are not there. So we can go up to 12%, 10% kind of thing. Problem is, the moment you increase the blending, up to 5%, 7%, consumer will be very happy because his food will be cooked very fast, because hydrogen has got 3 times more energy than natural gas. So they will say that my flame strength is very good, and they will appreciate that. The moment you go beyond that, and your wobble index, because of higher blend, will come down by almost 10%, at 10% level or so. So you will see that your flames are very high, intense plus high. So in that case, either you need to make certain changes in each of the households burner, or you need to restrict. So that's the kind of another major problem that may arise, and that would be required to be addressed. And when you are talking about the country of this size, probably even consuming natural gas over LPG is a challenge. I don't know how this particular part will be looked into. Last one is related to industries. So industries, there are certain proven concepts where you can go 20% or 30%. That is predominantly in the power sector. So power sector is one sector which is exploring in order to blend beyond 30%, even going for 100%. Siemens, GE, all these companies are already there with gas turbines which can consume 100% of hydrogen in the existing infrastructure based on certain changes. That kind of turbines are available. And Pravas in Gujarat, nearby, what I think, nearby, what is that name? In Gujarat, there is a place called Kavas. So their NTPC is trying 2 things: to residential complexes as well as to their power plant. That power plant is quite big, 350 megawatt size of the power plant. So in that power plant, they have already tied up with GE, General Electric, and they are going to provide E-class turbines in order to enable them to start consuming blended hydrogen to the tune of 30%. So in power sector, such kind of applications, in Faridabad also they are trying, NTPC is trying to blend because of the compulsion in terms of making the air clean. So these kind of applications are the bulk consumers, and probably going forward will be the fastest consumer in order to get the economics and this kind of pilots running. For rest of the other industrial sectors, going beyond 2% requires certain kind of changes or other modification. So that will be slightly challenging. Last point I will just like to mention before closing it, so that I can conclude the whole objective. As far as transportation is concerned, pipeline is only the medium of transport. Compatibility does matter, but it is only a medium of transport. Transportation of any blend or hydrogen would be required when it becomes more economical. And while blending in the network, there are two different ways of blending. One is somebody right at the nodes, at the originating point, where gas is being injected in the trunk pipeline, cross-country pipeline, can start injecting the hydrogen if it is a proven concept, let's say 2%. They can directly blend and that can reach out to any people. Thereafter, suppose some of the industry want 10%, 20% in the CGD network, in that particular GA for that customer, probably that kind of blending can be enhanced. So model is one where like Avantika Gas, PPCL, like we have 50 GAs, some of the mature GAs, we are also thinking about it. So there we can start doing locally, or as a nation, we can start taking the clue and right at the trunk level, we can start blending. This will again bring down the cost. And that is why I wanted to mention, if we are going ahead with isolated one versus directly blended at the trunk pipeline, will again make a difference in order to address the affordability component for the consumers in this whole business cycle. Thank you. I'll keep on answering if at all more question comes up.
Thank you, Shyam, for the very detailed explanation of what are the different use cases in CGD today, I think which you and Rajiv both catered, but what are the kind of blends with the current equipments they can use, and beyond that, what changes either in the engine or in the burner will be required. I think what you brought an important point is like, why do we go for blend, right? Like why BPCL or any operator will be inclined to go for blend. One is like it is being pushed by the government through a mandate, which was saying like 20% mandate is likely to come by 2030 in all cities. So that is one push. Now the effect of that push will be like typically as of today's price, hydrogen is higher priced than natural gas. So if you blend any amount of hydrogen, though it has higher energy density as energy in term versus natural gas. So at some right price point, it will still be some parity, but above a price point, this blended fuel will be higher cost to the end consumer, right? And possibly the government has to either subsidize the cost of hydrogen or the cost to the end consumer, but only the case where hydrogen production becomes lower than natural gas, then I think the blending is something which will be economical from the operator's perspective, right? And you would want to do that blending, at least till whatever portion the end consumer is not affected for need of no change of the appliances, right? So that is, I think, the gist that I got from your point. Now, bringing in Bala, who kind of have looked into the safety aspects and who understands the material side of hydrogen, like what is that feature, a characteristic of hydrogen which pose this challenge of increasing the blend ratio with pipeline materials. Bala, what is your thought on the design considerations? Like, I think, should we go for pipeline or not? That is a question of economics and other things. I think that we have addressed, Bala. Once it is discussed that, okay, we are going on this route, either pushed by government policy or by the economical reasons, then how do we ensure right safety of our pipelines with the right design considerations? I think your thoughts and points there will be useful, Bala.
Yeah, there are three ways in which you have to look at it. One is, what is the material that is used for our gas pipelines? Usually, all these gas pipelines, which are hydrocarbon movement, which all started in West, like Alaska, Canada, Siberia, and all, they call them as line pipe steels, which has to have operate even at minus 60 degrees Celsius. But in India, we don't have that headache. So why that minus 60 they had kept is there is something called ductile brittle transition that takes place in steel, and the steel has to be ductile, and particularly the place where we do welding, it is spirally welded to get a pipe. The sheet is welded spirally at site to get a pipe. So the weld is the vulnerable points. So we don't have that minus 60, minus 40 headaches. Nature has been kind to us. So our we will not touch. We don't have to go for such stringent DBDTs, ductile brittle transition temperatures, and that's why it's a lot easier to do things in India than in any of those places. Imagine, I mean, the gas was available in Siberia, but you have to operate at minus 60, the pipelines. Now, that problem is not there here. But on the other hand, hydrogen embrittlement is a very serious problem. Now, and particularly in the weld area. So, what you need to look at is we need to do what is called accelerated tests on small sections to see whether hydrogen embrittlement happens, particularly in the weld regions, or any other coating or something has to be given, a polymer coating or something has to be given to handle that. And there has to be continuous sensors that has to be put to check if things are all right. Sensors are also sent in like torpedoes. They go in and they continuously check and tell you whether it is okay or not. So that is the point from the point of view of design and retrofit times, what you look for. Hydrogen embrittlement is a critical one, nothing else, because it's already existing pipeline and it has a service life and this. Now the issue comes in something else, that is on the storage and at the point of use. Here I would like to add one thing, which is a very interesting technological transition that is happening on the mobility side. You see, when we were moving towards electrification, instead of importing oil or petrol or hydrocarbon, we'll ended up importing lithium and nickel and cobalt and even if at the raw material stage or even cells. So finally, one foreign exchange outgo is replaced by another foreign exchange outgo, and concurrently we are losing all the engineering part of the IC engine. But luckily, what has happened now is with hydrogen, there is a salvaging feature that is coming. Now, all the companies are now experimenting with how to run the IC engine in mobility directly with hydrogen. Direct. We are not even thinking blend. We can even go direct, because there your changes are done at the production of the cylinder and its coatings and its hydrogen embrittlement, etc. The same thing that is there in steel pipeline, it comes here, but the only difference is the temperatures are a lot higher. But the beauty of that is we can set the IC engine on a sweet spot of a constant RPM, which gives more than nearly 40% efficiency. Of course, and therefore NOx production will be higher, so that can be addressed in a different way with the catalytic converters and other things in a next generation converters. But what I predict now in mobility with respect to hydrogen in mobility is not going to be driven by PEM fuel cells, because that's very expensive. Capex is high, and already existing infrastructure in IC engine is now getting re-energized. Now this is number one. Number two is the cost. There, when you look at the cost of fuel, you are comparing with diesel and petrol, right? So there, the calorific value or that is available from hydrogen is 1 kg of hydrogen will give you 35 kilometers if it is a passenger car, 10 kilometers, 8 kilometers if it is a 20-30 ton truck, and that is same as 1 gallon of petrol, which is 3.4 liters. And cost of 3.5 liters or 4 liters of petrol will be 400 rupees, right? So in other words, what happens is that the IC engine, combined with a very strong hybrid with a very small battery, is going to be the future. So there we have a saving grace. In other words, when we look at the cost of hydrogen, you are looking at it as today's cost from the point of view of what is the cost of purchase of hydrogen. If you look at it from the other end, if I'm substituting petrol and diesel, I'm only looking at what is the cost of hydrogen per kg there, right? But there we need another technology that has to come. We call it as complementary technologies has to work in. I need carbon canisters and cost of storage per kg of hydrogen or whatever it is. Today, if you put a truck with about 50 kgs of hydrogen, it will do 500 kilometers, 20-ton truck. And for a ton, it carries so much of weight. So it does the weight of the canister or even carbon or even metal liner canister is nothing. It doesn't add to the weight, but it makes a very big difference. This thing, and that operates from depot to depot. So refilling stations cost and cost of real estate for filling station, all of those things come down. So in other words, there will be something called low hanging fruits and first drivers in mobility. So the first driver in mobility is going to be zero emission trucking and even this thing, because that does three things. It achieves decarbonization goals. It achieves your independence from import of either petrol or lithium-based and rare earth compounds, cells and whatnot. And at the same time, all the jobs in the IC engine sector is protected. Now, we expect that within a year, all these things are going to roll out. And so it's not going to be hydrogen fuel cell cars and trucks and this thing. They also will be there. It is there. But directly, hydrogen H2ICE it will be the front runner in this. Now, I can give you a small thing. That is where what happens is there you can accept 400 rupees, per kg of hydrogen, because that's the same money you're going to spend on diesel from the mileage point of view, right? So that is the beauty of it. So we have to identify all these niches. The other thing that was demonstrated in Northern England is what is called a hydrogen hub, where windmill sectors are all there along this thing, or even your fertilizer plants produce grey hydrogen, but they produce much more than they can consume. So a lot of demo projects of running buses along certain routes where chloroalkali and fertilizer plants are there, which anyway are going to produce hydrogen, and that can be tanked, and you can run 400-500 kilometers of buses on specific routes. So that way the learning curve, the capability, before we do the capacity, we understand the capability and the knowledge part of it will get amply demonstrated. So my suspicion is this: the Tatas and Ashok Leyland will start putting out the IC engine based trucks which run on hydrogen, produced by green hydrogen. Already Tatas are investing in huge money in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and other areas. Tata Motors is investing, right, in green hydrogen production. Now, coming to the cost of green hydrogen, it is going to 75% of the cost is electricity. So the cost of electricity almost determines the cost of hydrogen. So you can just take cost of electricity. So today we are going to spend about 55 kilowatt hour to produce a kg of hydrogen, right? So if it is 5 rupees a kilowatt hour, 1 unit, your electricity cost itself is 300 rupees or something. So unless otherwise, we are at 2 rupees per unit of electricity, which gives you the electricity cost is almost 100 rupees, and then add another 50 to 100 rupees as other costs and then pressure boosting cost, etc. So you should expect something around 175, 180, or just less than 2 rupees, 200 per kg of hydrogen. That is what is the target, and that comes with a solar PV hybrid. You are getting a 2.5 rupees a unit. So the business model has to combine certain things very carefully and do it. The cost of dispensation, and just like petrol pumps, you expect that thing to be there. That's not going to be easy. That's going to be only demo projects. But what will definitely happen is buses and trucks with IC engine and with hybridizing also, with so that all your starting, stopping are all done with electric. Maybe as a strong hybrid is a game changer.
Thank you, Bala. I think again very useful thoughts, and I think that's why I think the world is also projecting that route of increasing mobility applications of green hydrogen as we evolve. I think you have given a nice topic to look together, Bala, maybe next time on hydrogen direct combustion in ice. So we will cover that. But I think now we are fairly close, like we have stepped beyond the 1.5 hours we planned. There have been flowing some questions. I'm just reading some questions. If we can just give a very pointed answer, I think let's use that also as a conclusion of today's discussion. I think the topic is very extensive, but between all of us, I think we have brought some very useful elements and facts to the current developments and trends we see. The question is around the pricing part, the capex part, of pipelines, like what is the current cost of just conventional pipeline layout of natural gas, and now if to this existing pipeline, what is that incremental cost typically that goes into for hydrogen retrofitting, let's say even to a blend of 10 or 15%. So Shyam, do you want to take this question and just give very pointed numbers there, Shyam?
So I'll give you the response within 4 sentences, not more than that. So first sentence is, at present the cost is about 5 to 7 crores rupees per kilometers. That is what is the kind of cost we incur in laying the pipelines. As far as repurposing, let's say we repurpose the pipeline, same pipeline for hydrogen. That cost will be hardly 5% or 20% of the cost of new pipeline that would be required to be set up for hydrogen, new pipeline for hydrogen. So precisely it gives the idea how much is required for new. 5 to 25% of the new pipeline additional cost would be required depending upon the condition of pipeline for repurposing the pipeline. Otherwise, you have to go for new pipeline, which would be somewhere around 17 or 16 minimum, because as per ASTM B31, the cost means most of such pipelines are required to be stainless steel. So that cost is very high. So it would be somewhere around 14 to 15 crores. That.
Sure.
If I may just add, in UK, they have experienced that new grid, if you want to create on hydrogen, will be 4 times more expensive. So utilizing the existing grid with retrofitting will be 4 times more cost effective. This is what they've experienced.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah, that's why.
Yeah. And on the operating expenses, there is very limited difference between operating a normal network and the one on hydrogen.
It's the problem is, sir, in operating, since you have brought that particular factor, I wanted to touch upon, but time was not permitting. Quickly, the biggest problem is the moment you start increasing the blending. Biggest problem is in compression. You need more compressors because your hydrogen is very small molecule. So volumetric density and mass density, if you combine together, it will give you 88% of the pipeline. The moment you start increasing the blend, you need at least 40 to 70-80% more compression based on the desired level of pressure that is required in the hydrogen or whatever the hydrogen being produced at the supply point. Let's say
Right.
alkaline, so you will get 20, so more cost. If you get 40 there, then probably less cost. So 40 to 80% more cost is required to be incurred in compression, which is a very significant factor. So I just wanted to mention over here as a passing remark. Okay.
Sure, sure. I think, thank you. And I think Parul's one slide has that point clear that for hydrogen in pipelines, almost 50% is the OPEX cost. So I think that is where the compression related electricity cost kind of goes in. Another point, Rajiv, question is around like what is the roadmap that you believe India should think about? Like one Shyam already told that government is thinking of this 20% mandate in CGD network by 2030, right? So that is one way of thinking. Are there any other strategic points which you think like can be done, given that networks are still in the very early stage in the country, right? Out of the 300 CGDs allocations, many are yet to start laying down their pipelines. So at this point and juncture, what differently could be done so that we have a more long running and productive infrastructure?
So I'm told, there are 3 or 4 different groups which the government has constituted, and also industry associations, and they are looking at, a decentralized approach to begin with. So what they are looking at is, kind of creation of load centers and availability of green or whatever kind of hydrogen close to those growth centers or load centers, with limited infrastructure to transport and distribute the hydrogen that is produced. So if there are 1 or 2 big, say, fertilizer plants or a steel plant or aluminum plant or somebody who is looking at green hydrogen, combine that with some industrial, small industrial load and, local distribution company, which is willing to blend gas and then distribute it within that localized area, and give it also for transportation. So those nodes or those load centers are, I think, those groups are identifying, and sooner than later we will have a list of all those load centers across India where a decentralized approach of production of hydrogen, transportation and local use of hydrogen will evolve. And then I guess as we go along, they will get interconnected through hydrogen pipelines or whichever way going forward. So that's the roadmap that is being thought and is being worked on.
Sure, I think that makes a lot of sense to use it that way. Bala, anything to add on your side, like while we are creating this system, which Rajiv said of decentralization use, maybe more with direct hydrogen combustion facilities and other things, there will be a point where we need a technology of separating hydrogen from the blended system, right? So any already developments in that, like
Yeah, there are
more
technologies
efficient?
that are really in the make. In fact, even when you try to do small experiments with hydrogen methane mixtures, a very simple thermal segregation will separate the two gases quite a bit. In fact, keeping them mixed is more difficult than separating them. That is why he said that there is a big volumetric density difference, and therefore if you just leave them, they'll separate like water and oil. Okay, so but not fully, but what happens is it does that. So there is some advantage. In fact, the energy has to be spent more to keep them mixed, and that's why you need the pressure to increase the density of the hydrogen part of the gas. Anyway, that is the first part. The second thing that I would like to state is everybody is looking at it as a green hydrogen as the only option. There are other technologies which are there, and it is not that natural gas or even biomethane, even if you go carbon neutral, they are all not bad, because the carbon-hydrogen bond is easy to break compared to hydrogen-oxygen bond in electrolysis. People think that you burn CH4, then capture CO2. There is another technology in which you can separate carbon from hydrogen, from methane, and you will get 4 hydrogen anyway, 2H2. So you'll also get carbon as a byproduct. And in that process, if I add moisture or water, I can even enhance the quantity of hydrogen I produce. In fact, that's the most efficient way of producing hydrogen without having any effect on, you will even have a byproduct, right? In fact, if you mix hydrogen and methane together under certain conditions, the activity of carbon is very close to 1. In fact, we need 99.8% hydrogen and very small methane to even stop production of carbon, sooting. Slight increase in temperature will start depositing carbon. So the what is a problem in one is actually a solution in another, right? So that's where the certain other technologies are moving in, but Europe is absolutely adamant on green hydrogen. And therefore all the investments have gone there. But if you look at it for India, I would still say that, look, we can produce large quantities of biomethane, and all our knowledge in CNG, LNG, etc. is directly applicable there. And it will be produced in a decentralized way anyway, correct? And it becomes additional income for our farmers if we start having a very clever way of making biomethane available. The only thing with biomethane is it can have other impurities, right? That you have to clean up. And this is number one. Number two, separation. Since it can easily separate hydrogen and methane, and you need only a small amount of energy to separate, you can separate it at the point of use. In fact, that's what Europe is planning also to do. Like, you mix it, you send it, and then demix it at the point of use. When you demix it, you are going to have 2 streams, natural gas and hydrogen. And people who want pure hydrogen will use pure hydrogen. People who can use it mixed will use it mixed, and only methane or natural gas can use. So that technology will give little more life to running the existing pipeline on blends. Just the demixing technologies, which is not expensive, because it's anyway, these two guys don't want to be together, right? Hydrogen and methane. So you're forcing them into marriage, so it's easy to divorce them. And if you want even higher purity of membrane which separates out hydrogen, methane will immediately do the job. So that is what is the thing that will happen. And the other thing, as I said, is that deliberately take carbon out in the beginning itself means you use that also as a technology at the point of use. So you're having hydrogen plus methane and knock off the carbon in the methane. So you have 100% hydrogen. So that's all. That has always been my pet idea. But that is, so in other words, you can demix, or you can even strip the carbon. So that gives you the existing pipeline, which nicely transfers hydrogen, methane as a carrier now, correct? And therefore your existing CNG terminals, your existing gasification, even you can take lignite, make methane very easily, right? And then transport it, and then strip the carbon at the point of use. And this is that will be much more cost effective for India.
Sure. So good, Bala. I think, these are some good ideas, potent ideas, I would say. Shyam, you want to add anything to the last point for us before closure, in terms of anything on the policy side from a long perspective? Do you think that world should be looking? You're on mute, Shyam.
Yeah. Couple of things I would like to add. See, we should definitely keep on looking in the West and keep on learning from them. But see, the biggest problem with developed world versus developing world is the affordability. They can have the per capita income in terms of tens of thousands of, and here in India we have hardly 500, 600, something of that and all. So we need to be very mindful, learning from them, and then indigenizing it and domesticate it based on the suitability of the local. So global to local is very important concept, and that is why I say, even in the company, let us think about local. rather than global or local. It has to be local because they are doing good jobs. Let us domesticate it and try to act like local. So practically what I can tell that there are a couple of things we can definitely do. One thing is whatever we are doing, particularly in the CGD segment, all those CGD owners, because we have about 53, 52 up and running CGD owners. So for all of them, wherever they have developed the pipeline, fine, because almost 250 or GAs are in various stages of development and the rest of the GAs are still virgin. So wherever they are going to lay the pipelines, those pipelines can be thought out as the broader use in future as blended hydrogen. Presently, of course, it is not commercially viable because if you once lay the pipeline only keeping natural gas in mind, and in future, if you start blending, you need to repurpose. So you have to incur more cost. So if you plan it right in the beginning, you can further reduce the cost by 10 to 20%. So that is the added advantage if they can plan right in the beginning. That is one thing. Second part is whenever there is a possibility, try to explore for the options to have the more congregated kind of requirement of hydrogen. Doing in isolation and making in commercial may be difficult. So it is always good to try to combine 2-3 different CGDs and do it so that we can have more diversified kind of experience and outcome in order to take a call or give inputs to the right authorities. So that is another part that we can do it. So I think that's it because these are the more important things we need to start with, and gradually it may lead to some of the other things. And I would like to just add one more thing. See, biogas, we have been trying to do. We have given almost 326 LOIs in India, and we have started directly supplying through the retail outlets. There are many challenges in terms of perennial supply, over costing, and its availability and demand of the biogas suppliers. So costing is one of the very important problem as of now. Even in feedstock, we have about 720 million tons of biomass available in this country. It looks very whopping. The moment you start going to make any of the projects viable, you will not find the utilization more than 40%, 30%. So these are very capital intensive. The moment practically you go and start investing, there are so many challenges along the way. We, being the developing country, may not afford, but many of the developed countries may. So that's the kind of gaps we have. We need to further drill down and look into. Highs and all, we are also doing. Bala sir, we are trying to do. BPCL has done the MOU with Ashok Leyland, and as we speak, we are testing that vehicle, and probably there are certain challenges, and these are not jet EV, zero energy vehicle. So it will always be clean energy, but not zero emission energy. So there are certain technical nuances. I'm not getting into that, but we are also doing just to give you confidence that we are into that space, sir. Thanks. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. At the end, let me express my gratitude to take this opportunity to say that this opportunity was wonderful. I learned a lot from my co-panelist Rajiv Mathur sir, as usual. He is ocean of knowledge. And Bala sir, I came to know about him. Very good thoughts, sir. I have learned a lot of things. I'll definitely take it as a takeaway and try to replicate the same thing as and when required. And Rahul ji, Parul, very insightful. It was really a great opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thanks to our audience for being active, listening, asking questions. Some of the questions, even in my questions, I have covered, and many of your questions are also covered in general discussions by our esteemed panelists. So thanks to you. And thanks to our panelists for really making time for sharing these valuable points. I think some good points have emerged from these discussions, like in what form, what, how, costing, some new technologies, also some new ideas of usage and maybe very alternative to current form of hydrogens which we are thinking in terms of green hydrogen. So I think all these are good things to continue kind of debating, giving more precise answers to them. I think at P Manifold, I would be very happy to kind of continue engaging also through different means to really kind of look into more details on some of these very important questions, not just for India, but also for the world. And in that process, I think what you said, Shyam, like not necessarily local, there can be very new ideas which India can also feed to the world. So let's also look into that also as a possibility. So thank you again, everyone, and wonderful. And we will close this session. I think in a day or two, the video recording of this session will also be made available. So all the discussions will be available on the website. Again, thank you and have a great day. Thanks, my panelists. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.